All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I'm joined by, of course, my buddy Kevin, the Buffalo Jet fan. What's going on, man?
Oh, nothing much, man. I appreciate you having me on, dude.
Yeah, of course, man. So we got the combine this week. We have free agency less than a month away. Like it's 100% crystal clear. The Jets will be making moves. Like there's so much pressure on Douglas, on Woody Johnson, Salah, Hackett. I mean, even on Aaron Rodgers too. But what's kind of been, obviously 2023 was a complete disappointment and letdown on so many different, so many different accounts. Where's kind of your headspace, your mindset heading into some pretty exciting times, of the off season?
I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I think I definitely won't be using the word Super Bowl that I was throwing around this time last offseason. I think a lot of the reasons we were excited last year are still there, defensively and special teams. Uh, Offense, it sucks because with Aaron Rodgers, you think you're getting a 3-year window, maybe, and now one of those years is just taken away right off the bat, and then maybe the second years are compromised with his injury. But really, if the Jets can just get the offensive line is where I'm focused. And if they could get it to whatever the 16th, 18th best offensive line, they're not going to turn it from 32nd to top 5 in one offseason. But a well protected Aaron Rodgers with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall on the defense and special teams, I still think the Jets can compete to win their division. Now, in terms of going into the playoffs and beating Mahomes, I can't even get my head quite there. But I still think 0 games with Aaron Rodgers, even if they can get 13 or 14 games out of him, you only got to win 3 more games to make the playoffs. And I think that should still be a reasonable expectation for Jet fans.
Dude, I love how you talked about just kind of being like a really an average offensive line. You know what I'm saying? Like what? And it's because me and Tyson would always talk about that kind of mid-season during the podcast episodes. We're always like, bro, like what other fan bases like on their hands and knees, like begging for the 18th or 20th ranked offensive line?
Yeah.
Like we just haven't had answers there, and like some solid individual performances throughout the years, like Morgan Moses, George Fam, AVT when he's healthy, Becton's rookie year, but just a solid 5, or even like 4 out of the 5. If you could rely on 4 out of the 5, like I feel like you're in an awesome position. But I think that's kind of the perfect segue to really your perfect plan, realistically speaking, on the offensive line for the Jets, this offseason. There's a bunch of different, you know, combinations, I guess, right? There's talks about moving Titman over to guard, potentially moving AVT to tackle. Do you sign tackles? Do you sign guards? So many different options, so many different avenues that you can travel down. What's your picture perfect kind of outlook?
Yeah, I think the AVT tackle guard stuff comes down to the Jets probably doing the best they can in free agency in the draft and then kind of plugging him in where he fits best. I don't have a strong opinion on AVT at tackle or guard or Tibman at center or guard. My main thing is once you pick a spot, just keep him there. All right, you want to play Tibman at right guard, AVT at right tackle, or both of them one spot to the left, that's fine. But you can't have just one injury and then all of a sudden you're playing musical chairs. Have enough depth to where you can develop these guys in one spot, because I think maybe with ABT, the moving back and forth might have contributed to injury. Maybe, I don't know. Just don't have him play in Denver, if anything else. But I think if I could have it, ideally, I would like Timmon at center and AVT at guard, and then cut Lake and Tomlinson and sign another guard in free agency, and that's your interior. And then if we could swing it, then you either get maybe like a Michael Onwenu to play right tackle or a Tyron Smith to play left tackle, and then your other tackle is your 10th overall pick. So you're kind of solving the 3 spots, 2 with free agency, and 1 with the 10th overall pick. And I got to say, Tyron Smith is starting to grow on me a little bit. If you look at the left tackle market, there's not a lot of great options. You're either paying somebody mediocre, paying somebody old, or paying somebody injury prone. And unlike David Bakhtiari, Tyron Smith did at least play 14 games last year. But I think Michael Onwenu would be the perfect blend of position of need, youth, and durable. He'll probably be the top guy on the market. It's probably going to cost you a lot more than you'd like, but he's 27 years old and you could plug him in and he and AVT could be your right side for the next 3 or 4 years. So he'd probably be target number 1. And then on the tackle market, probably Tyron Smith is right behind him.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting. Man, like on one hand, like you look at the draft and it's so deep in positions of need for the Jets, but specifically a tackle with free agency, it's just like you like you said, you either have to pay for an injury prone player, you either have to overpay for somebody. It's going to be weird. I think one name that's in my opinion pretty interesting is Cam Robinson. If the Jaguars, make him a cap casualty, I believe they'll save. I think it's like 17. It's some crazy amount.
Yeah.
Robinson, I believe, is owed 20 million. I could be wrong on the exact number, but it's looking like the Jaguars have their work cut out for them with Josh Allen and potentially Calvin Ridley. Where do you kind of stand with Cam Robinson? Do you think he's like a sleeper, or are you just totally fine? You're good with other options.
I would put him. I think there's a tier of tackles that are kind of like meh, right? There's like a Jonah Williams and Trent Brown and Illuminor, and I would put him right in there with that tier of players. That's like you can't really turn your nose at any offensive tackle option. Although George Fant is right in there, so he's the kind of player where to me, it's not just about, okay, could this guy be your starting left tackle? It's really about the totality of your starting five. So if Cam Robinson is your fifth best offensive lineman, you probably have a pretty good offensive line. If he's your fourth best offensive lineman, you're probably okay. If he's your second or third best offensive lineman, you're probably in pretty rough shape. I just looking analytically, it looked like he kind of last year he was probably around the level of play that Dwayne Brown was in 2022, where it's just kind of below average left tackle play. Nothing great, not a liability. So if you're telling me AVT is at guard and you got an upgrade from Lakin, and then whatever you draft a right tackle number 10 overall, and Tittman's at center, and Cam Robinson's your left tackle, and you sign a swing tackle, I think on paper that's probably an average to above average offensive line, and you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, so you mentioned cutting Lakin just outright. So
Yeah.
that's like priority, or I guess maybe plan A for Lakin as opposed to a restructure or a pay cut.
Yeah, if he's going to take a flat out pay cut, I think I'd be open to keeping him. And I was optimistic he would bounce back this past season, but now it's been 2 straight years just under 2 different offensive coaching staffs where he's actually set the record for pressures allowed by a guard in NFL history last year, since they started keeping track of it. So I just think you could save $9 million by doing it. The dead money is a sunk cost to me. I would take that $9 million and try and get an upgrade at guard with Lakin. It's just unfortunate it didn't work out. I would cut bait.
Is there any guard that you like specifically have your eye on, or is it just let's move on from Lakin and figure out, the option afterwards?
Yeah, there's a handful of names. I think Kevin Zeitler would be the number one target. I don't know if Baltimore lets him go. He is a little older, so you're probably talking a 1-year deal. But he was a top 8 guard in the league this year at 33 years old, and he's been durable. Kevin Dotson is a name from he was with the Steelers, and he had a breakout year with the Rams. Not a good run blocker, not a perfect scheme fit, but he has been one of the better pass protecting guards in the NFL the past 3 seasons, and he's young. So even Graham Glasgow from Detroit. So there are 5 or 6 names where either anywhere from a guy who's like 27 who plug the spot for a while, or just 1-year band-aids, and all of that to me I think is a better option than Lakin Tomlinson.
I totally feel that. The one thing that's pretty cool is like if they do move on from Lakin, it does seem like the guard market's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Um,
Or center, if you want to sign a center and put Tittman at guard, whatever you got to do.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, right? We have to get upgrades across this thing. The only two, it sucks to say it because Douglas has been here since 2019, but the only 2 offensive linemen that I feel great about, AVT and Tittman. But in the case of Vera Tucker, he's coming off 2 back-to-back season-ending injuries. Granted, different injuries, but he's still missing time. So I don't want to say he's a shoo-in to play the full 17-game regular season,
Yeah.
and then of course the playoffs after that. But shifting away from offensive line, when you look at wide receiver, this is another big talking point, another massive position of need. We just have to get some more help opposite of Garrett Wilson, whether you want to talk about on the outside or on the inside at slot. I feel like nobody's really talking about addressing slot wide receiver, but it's a massive need when we just take a look at Randall Cobb's contributions last season, or I guess lack thereof. I really like Xavier Gibson, but how much faith do the Jets really want to put on his shoulders in a win now kind of, you got to win the division, make a playoff run type of year? How do you kind of view this wide receiver market?
Yeah, well, I think there were some names that technically are going to hit free agency, but are probably going to be retained before actually free agency starts. We know T. Higgins already got tagged. Michael Pittman, that's probably coming, and Mike Evans almost assuredly retires a Buccaneer. So those three names off the list, I think you're looking at probably Calvin Ridley, a guy who's like a number two who might get paid like a number one. You have to think like those desperate teams, like the Jets in 2019 would have been like, oh, Calvin Ridley could be our number one receiver for Sam Darnold. Let's pay him 19 million. Some team might do that, but I would want to try and get a receiver who, because there are names like Tyler Boyd and Curtis Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, but I really would want to try and get a receiver who can play the X and the Z, who can be an outside receiver for when we go 12 personnel, which you may be running a lot of with Rodgers, that can be on the field. Because the problem with a guy like Curtis Samuel or Tyler Boyd is if you're in 12 personnel, then they're either playing out of position really limited, or they're just on the bench. And then who's that? And then Lazard is Lazard is out there as your other wide receiver. So I would try to get another outside receiver. And then Lazard can kind of be the big slot, which he's had success with. He played over 50% of his snaps in the slot. His last 2 years in Green Bay, I think his blocking is you're more able to take advantage of his blocking there. And he kind of sometimes he lines up as like an H-back and he can kick out on those run plays. So that's probably your best bet. I think Calvin Ridley does provide you with that. Ridley, the hands are kind of spotty, and the yak ability, he doesn't give you much, but he gets open a lot. He gets open at will, and he was burning corners a lot last year. He and Trevor Lawrence not on the same page a lot. Jag fans are going to blame the receiver over their golden boy in sunshine there, but some of the mistakes were on him playing hurt. So Calvin Ridley would be my number one call, and I actually like Darnell Mooney. From the Chicago Bears, who's a smaller guy, but in the past he has been able to line up outside quite a bit. And Justin Fields, it was a lot of one read to DJ Moore and then run. Not trying to kill Fields, but that's just how it is. They didn't throw their second read a lot, and that was Darnell Mooney, and I think he was open a lot more than his stats suggest. That's kind of an under the radar name for me. But my first call would probably be to Calvin Ridley.
For sure. Yeah, no, I like both options. Again, much like tackle, it's like whether the Jets want to target Boyd or Mike Evans hits, or whoever you really want, maybe outside of Odell Beckham, it's kind of like they're all upgrades in one way or another. Like you, I mean, it on one hand it sucks to be in this position, but on the other, it's like, okay, well, we're not just shooting for one guy that can be that upgrade, and if we miss out on him, it's just like, great, free agency screwed. It's like we have like a nice handful of options. Even with those, even with Higgins getting tagged and potentially Pittman and Evans being off the board, it's like we still have, quite. I mean, we have options here to, to improve this room. As far as the 10th overall pick is concerned, it's so early, we haven't hit the combine yet, right? Where do you kind of do you have your eyes maybe set on a specific position going in over the rest, or is it kind of just, hey, we'll see how the board plays out?
Yeah, well, I've watched 9 prospects in total. I'll probably get up to like 15 of just guys who are potentially be taken in the first round. I think I'll put it this way: if the Jets don't take an offensive lineman, I think they would have to have a really good reason not to. And I know you don't just go in for need. All right, like if whatever, if Rome Odunze is there at 10, and like Daniel Jeremiah, Joe Douglas has him as his third best player in the draft, and he has Fashanu as his 14th best player in the draft, they're going to take Odunze. That's just how teams operate. But if it's close, you got to lean towards need. And I think that there is a tier of offensive linemen after Joe Alt in Fashanu, Fuaga, and Latham that I think pick your style, pick your fighter, left tackle, right tackle. Who's a better fit in the zone blocking scheme? Probably Fuaga gives you that. Fashanu gives you the left tackle ability. JC Latham just plays like a freaking rhino on bath salts, just absolutely destroying people. People are not high enough on JC Latham. He is an absolute. I know people don't like the. We'll see what he weighs in at. All right, if he's 370, you got to leave it alone because of the Becton stuff. I hear you, but that dude's a mauler. So that is a tier for me where the combination of need, and they're all probably top 15 players in my opinion, where there's going to be a good offensive lineman at 10, and I think you got to come away with one. Now, if you kill it in free agency, you get for how you somehow manage to come away with Onwenu, and You sign whatever Tyron Smith, and then you whatever you love Brock Bowers and you want to take Brock Bowers, and then you get another tackle to develop at pick 72 along with Carter Warren. Okay, you can maybe sell me that if you absolutely crush it in free agency, but I think like 80% chance that the Jets are coming away with an offensive lineman at 10.
For sure. I'm kind of, in the same way of thinking here. One thing that was interesting is kind of like looking back on Joe Douglas's war room video, and he was really high on Michael Mayer. He was considering taking him at 15 and obviously he ends up being a second round pick to Vegas.
Oof.
So if Brock Bowers is on the board, right, who's a much better like prospect than Mayer, I really feel like there could be Douglas potentially pounding on the table for him. But of course, new year, different situation, with clear needs at offensive tackle. But dude, I appreciate you stopping by, man. It was always a blast. We definitely have to do it some more.
Yeah, man. Go Jets.
Awesome. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, like Kevin said, go Jets.